The Mafia Boss was rear-ended by a dessert truck in the rain, and the first woman brave enough to yell at him was holding a box of ruined cannoli. Dante Marino had survived 3 assassination attempts, 2 federal raids, 1 poisoned business dinner, and a childhood in a house where love was handed out like a debt. He had made senators lower their voices, judges check their locks, and grown men forget their own names when he looked at them too long. But on a wet Thursday evening outside the Grand Aurelia Hotel in Manhattan, Dante stood beside his black armored Escalade, with rain sliding down the shoulders of his coat, while a short, round, furious baker from Queens pointed at him with a crushed pastry box and said, "You park like a dramatic funeral procession in the middle of New York traffic." For the first time in years, no one around Dante knew what to do. His driver went still behind the open door. His guard, Luca, moved one hand toward his jacket and stopped because Dante lifted 2 fingers without looking at him. Horns screamed behind them. Rain slapped against the pavement. Steam rose from a street grate and wrapped around the black cars lined against the curb like smoke from a bad decision. The front of the old yellow delivery van had kissed the back bumper of Dante's Escalade hard enough to dent the hood, but not hard enough to hurt anyone. It was the kind of accident rich men turned into lawsuits and poor people turned into prayers. Clara Hughes had no space left in her life for either. She stood in the rain, with her curls escaping from a red scarf, her brown apron soaked through, and powdered sugar stuck to one cheek, like a tiny insult from the universe. She was 26 years old, fat, tired, late, and not in the mood to be frightened by a man who looked like he had been carved from midnight and tax fraud. The name printed on the side of her truck, Hughes and Honey, was chipped and fading, but she had painted it herself after her father died, and every cracked letter still felt like a promise. Her father had left her recipes, an old truck that groaned on hills, and medical bills that arrived with the patience of wolves. So when the very expensive man in the very expensive coat turned slowly toward her, as if people normally apologized for breathing too close to him, Clara did not apologize first. She lifted the smashed box higher. "These cannoli were for a private dessert table," she said. "Do you know how many hours it takes to make shells that don't taste like sadness? And now look at them. They're cream soup with ambition." Dante stared at her. Not because she was beautiful, though she was in a way that did not ask permission. Not because she was loud, though she was. Not because she had hit his car, though no one had hit anything belonging to him in a very long time and lived long enough to complain about dessert. He stared because she was looking at him like he was an inconvenience, not a threat. Her eyes were dark and bright beneath the rain, her mouth set with the stubborn shape of a woman who had argued with landlords, vendors, debt collectors, health inspectors, and men who believed raising their voices made them kings. Dante knew fear. He could smell it on men before they spoke. He knew when someone was pretending not to tremble. This woman was angry. She was wet. She was probably one bad invoice away from disaster, but she was not afraid of him. "You hit my car," he said. "You stopped like the city personally betrayed you. My driver stopped because traffic stopped. Your driver stopped because your whole line of cars decided to occupy 3 lanes like a funeral for common sense." Luca looked away. The driver coughed once and covered it with his fist. Dante's face did not change, but something near his eyes shifted, small and quick. Clara saw it because she had spent half her life watching people pretend not to feel things. Her father used to smile at creditors before closing the door and sitting silently at the kitchen table. Her mother used to say everything was fine right before leaving for a double shift. Clara herself had laughed through enough disasters to know humor was sometimes just panic wearing lipstick. Dante stepped closer. Rain darkened his black hair and ran along the hard line of his jaw. He was tall enough that most people would have tilted their heads back and softened their voices. Clara only hugged the pastry box tighter against her middle. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. "No," she said, but unless you are the patron saint of ruined cannoli, I don't see how it helps. This time, Luca made a sound that was almost a laugh and almost a final mistake. Dante glanced at him, and the sound died. Then Dante looked back at Clara. What is your name? Why? Are you planning to sue me personally, or just haunt my Yelp page? Your name. She narrowed her eyes. Clara Hughes. His gaze moved once to the truck behind her. Hughes and Honey. My father's business. You were delivering to the Aurelia. I was, before your vampire parade blocked the entrance. The hotel has a service alley. The service alley is full of construction cones, 2 trash bins, and a man in a vest who told me to circle the block until my ancestors forgave me. I circled. Then you stopped. Then gravity, bald tires, and bad luck had a meeting. Dante looked at the hood of her van. It was dented worse than his Escalade. One headlight flickered weakly. The windshield wipers moved with the tired rhythm of old bones. Inside, stacked white bakery boxes had shifted and fallen across the passenger seat. Cream smeared one cardboard corner. A ribbon hung from the dashboard mirror, faded gold, tied around a small photograph of a smiling older man in a baker's coat. Something in Dante's chest tightened before he could name it. He did not like old photographs in working vehicles. They made people human too quickly. How much is the order worth? He asked. Clara blinked. Excuse me? The ruined desserts. How much? That depends. Are you asking because you plan to pay, or because you want to judge me in silence? I am asking because I plan to pay. Her mouth opened, then closed. The rain softened for a moment, leaving only the hiss of tires and distant sirens. A man in a silver hotel uniform stood beneath the awning, watching with the nervous stillness of someone who had just realized he recognized Dante Marino. 2 women in evening dresses paused near the revolving doors and quickly decided they had never been curious about anything in their lives. Clara noticed all of it then, the way people were not looking at him by looking everywhere else, the way his guard watched every window, the way the city seemed to bend around him without touching him. For the first time, a thin thread of caution moved through her anger. "Who are you?" she asked. Dante's answer did not come. Luca stepped closer and spoke low near his ear. "Boss." One word. Soft, careful, heavy. Clara heard it anyway. "Boss." Not sir, not Mr. Whatever. Boss. Her stomach dipped. She thought of every New York story people told in half voices near food trucks and corner stores. Names you did not say too loudly. Families that owned restaurants they never ate in. Men who smiled at charity events and broke people in private rooms. Her eyes moved back to Dante's face, and suddenly the expensive suit was not just expensive. The black cars were not just rude. The quiet around him was not respect, it was warning. Dante saw the moment she understood. Most people changed when they understood. They folded inward. They apologized too fast. They began offering explanations, names, favors, whatever they thought might keep them safe. Clara did none of that. She swallowed once, then lifted her chin higher, as if fear had only made her more offended. "Well," she said, "that explains the funeral procession." A strange silence opened between them. Then Dante smiled. Not much. Barely enough to be called one. But it changed his face so suddenly that Clara forgot for one dangerous second that she was standing in the rain beside a crime boss with a dented car and a box of pastry tragedy in her arms. The smile vanished almost as soon as it came, locked away behind the controlled expression men like him probably practiced in mirrors and courtrooms. But she had seen it. Worse, he knew she had. "Luca," Dante said, still looking at her, "pay the hotel for the missing dessert table. Pay Miss Hughes for the full order, the damage to her van, and whatever she loses tonight." Clara frowned. "I didn't ask for charity." "No, you accused me of murdering cannoli, because you did. Then consider it restitution. I can cover my own business." His eyes lowered briefly to the dented van, the taped side mirror, the worn tires, the faded name painted in honey-yellow letters. It was not cruel, that look, but Clara felt it anyway. She had felt looks like that her whole life. In school hallways when girls decided her body was a group project. At bank meetings when loan officers saw her size, her zip code, and her balance sheet before they heard her plan. At food festivals where men in linen shirts asked if she was the baker or just helping out. She knew the weight of being measured and dismissed in the same breath. Dante's voice softened, which somehow made it worse. I did not say you could not. Her grip tightened around the box. You thought it. His gaze returned to her face. No. I thought your tires are bad, your brakes are worse, and you drove across a bridge in a storm to deliver desserts to people who will complain if the sugar flowers lean left. Clara hated how accurate that was. That is not the point. It is exactly the point. Don't do that. Do what? Stand there looking like a murder prince and make sense. This time Dante did not smile, but the rain around them felt less cold. The hotel manager hurried out beneath a black umbrella, face pale and eager. Mr. Marino, I am so sorry for the inconvenience. We can have security move the service traffic immediately. Miss, you cannot leave your vehicle here. Clara turned on him so fast the manager took half a step back. Amazing. I've been circling this building for 20 minutes with 7 trays of desserts and 3 staff members pretending I was invisible, but now that I've tapped the Batmobile, everybody has eyes. Dante's head tilted slightly. The manager looked from Clara to Dante and made the wise choice to suffer quietly. Bring her remaining boxes inside, Dante said. The manager blinked. Of course. No, Clara said at the same time. Dante looked at her. No? No. Half of them are ruined, and the other half need to be checked before some finance guy bites into gravel, because one box took a nosedive. Then check them. I need space. The hotel has kitchens. The hotel kitchen staff will look at me like I brought raccoons in a tote bag. Dante turned to the manager. Give her the private prep room. The manager nodded so quickly. Clara worried for his neck. Yes, Mr. Marino. Clara stared at Dante. Do you always just say things and make reality rearrange itself? Yes. That must be annoying for everyone. Mostly. She should have walked away then. She should have accepted the prep room, saved whatever desserts she could, collected payment if her pride allowed it, and driven back to Queens with a story so strange no one at the commissary kitchen would believe it. Instead, she noticed something small. A white bakery box near the back of her van had not fallen with the others. It sat slightly crooked, its ribbon tied wrong. Clara knew her own ribbons. She tied them in a double loop with the tails cut even because her father had been fussy about presentation. This ribbon had been tied in a single knot. She moved before thinking. Dante noticed because men like him noticed everything. What is it? That box, she said. Luca stepped toward the van. Dante stopped him with one hand. Miss Hughes. Clara climbed carefully into the back of the van, rain dripping from her scarf onto the rubber floor. The air smelled like sugar, wet cardboard, vanilla cream, and the faint, burnt metal odor her engine made when it was nervous. She reached for the wrong ribbon box and paused. Her father's voice moved through memory, warm and tired. If something looks wrong, baby, don't touch it like you're brave. Touch it like you're smart. She picked it up from the sides and carried it to the edge of the van. I didn't pack this one. Dante's expression changed so completely that Clara's skin prickled. He took the box from her without brushing her fingers. That carefulness surprised her more than if he had grabbed it. He set it on the closed trunk of the Escalade and opened the lid. Inside, under 6 perfect chocolate-dipped strawberries that had not come from her kitchen, sat a small black flash drive wrapped in clear plastic. No one spoke. The rain seemed to grow louder. Luca's hand finally disappeared inside his jacket. The driver stepped closer to Dante. The hotel manager whispered something that sounded like a prayer and backed under the awning. Clara stared at the flash drive, then at the strawberries, then at Dante. "That is not mine," she said. "I know." "You know? If it were yours, you would have hidden it better." "I don't hide international mystery snacks in pastry boxes." Dante lifted the flash drive with a folded handkerchief. His face had gone cold in a way that made the rainy street feel suddenly smaller. Not angry, not surprised. Something quieter than both. Recognition. Luca leaned in. "Could be Russo." Dante said nothing. Clara heard the name and wished she had not. Russo landed in the air like a glass breaking in another room. She did not know the details, but she knew enough from city gossip and late-night truck vendors who saw more than they admitted. Victor Russo was not a person you wanted attached to your dessert order. He was the kind of name people used when they wanted to scare themselves into minding their business. Dante closed his fingers around the handkerchief. "Who touched your boxes?" Clara shook her head. "Hotel staff. A delivery runner. Maybe the guy blocking the alley. I don't know. I was trying not to hydroplane into your evil limo parade. Think. I am thinking. Loudly. In the rain. While discovering someone used my cannoli as a crime mailbox." His eyes lifted to hers. "This is serious." "Oh, thank you. I was waiting for the man with armed backup to explain the mood." Luca looked at her like she was either insane or becoming his favorite person by accident. Dante stepped closer, and this time Clara did step back, not because she wanted to, but because the space between them had changed. The street was no longer only a street. The hotel was no longer only a street. Her truck, her father's truck, her whole ridiculous sugar-scented life had just become part of something dark and expensive and deadly. "You need to come with me," Dante said. Clara laughed once. It came out too high. "Absolutely not. You are in danger. I was in danger before you arrived. I have debt, bald tires, and a landlord who thinks plumbing is a rumor. This is different. You don't get to decide that." His gaze sharpened. "Someone placed evidence in your delivery. They may believe you know what it means. I don't. That will not matter." The softness in his voice scared her more than the warning. Not because it was gentle, because it sounded true. Clara looked back at her van, at the boxes, at the little photograph of her father tied to the mirror. Marvin Hughes had built Hughes and Honey after 27 years of baking for other people's restaurants. He used to say a dessert truck was freedom with wheels. Then cancer took his strength, hospitals took their money, and grief took everything else except the keys. Clara had spent the past year trying to keep the engine alive, the recipes alive, the name alive. Now a stranger with winter eyes and blood on his reputation was telling her to leave it on the curb and climb into his car. "No," she said quietly. Dante studied her. "No, no. I am not disappearing into a black SUV because some mafia nonsense fell into my buttercream. I have a truck full of product, an invoice I need paid, a commissary slot at 5 in the morning, and a business that will not survive if I vanish every time a scary man says danger. I am not asking." "And there he is," she said, pointing at him. "There's the man everyone keeps flinching around." For a moment, she thought she had gone too far. Luca definitely thought so. The air changed around Dante again, tightening like a wire, but his anger did not move toward her. It moved inward, caught and held behind his teeth. He looked at the flash drive in his hand, then at the street, then back at her. "You are right," he said. Clara blinked. Dante looked almost annoyed with himself. "I am used to giving orders." "Wow, shocking. But I am telling you the truth. If Russo's people believe you carried this knowingly, they will come for you. If they believe you carried it unknowingly, they may still come for you to find out who used your truck. Either way, your apartment, your business, and anyone close to you may be watched by morning." Her stomach turned cold. "I don't have anyone close." The lie came too fast. Dante noticed, but he did not challenge it. That was his first mercy. Instead, he said, "Then let me protect what you have." Clara hated that sentence because for 1 second she wanted to believe it. She wanted someone with impossible money and dangerous hands to stand between her and the endless parade of problems that had been eating her life one bite at a time. She wanted new tires. She wanted paid invoices. She wanted to sleep without counting debt against the ceiling. She wanted to be soft for 5 minutes without the world punishing her for it. Wanting that made her angry. "I don't belong in your world," she said. "No," Dante said. "You were dragged into it. By my own truck. By someone who used you." The words landed harder than they should have. Clara had been used before. By banks that praised her father's work and denied his extensions. By event planners who begged for discounts and posted pictures without tagging her business. By men who called her bold when they wanted her funny and difficult when she said no. She looked at the flash drive again. Small, black, ugly. A whole nightmare the size of a thumbnail. The hotel doors opened, and 3 men in dark suits stepped out. They did not look at the manager. They did not look at the traffic. They looked at Clara's truck. Dante saw them at the same time she did. His voice changed. Luca. Everything happened quickly after that, but Clara remembered it in pieces. Luca moving in front of her, Dante's hand at her elbow, not grabbing, guiding, the 3 men splitting apart under the awning, one reaching inside his coat, the driver opening the Escalade door, a horn blaring, rain flashing in the headlights. Dante saying her name once, low and sharp, like he had known it longer than 10 minutes. Clara pulled her arm back. "My truck. I'll have it brought. My father's picture is inside." That stopped him. It should not have. There was danger 20 feet away and a flash drive in his hand that could probably start a war. But Dante looked at her face and understood something he did not want to understand. The van was not only a van. The faded photograph was not only paper. Some things mattered, because they were the last pieces of people who had loved us before the world became a bill. He turned to Luca. "Get the photograph." "Boss." "Now!" Luca ran. The first shot cracked against the hotel awning. Clara froze. Not because she had never imagined violence, but because imagination was quieter. Real gunfire tore the air open. People screamed. The manager dropped the umbrella. The women in evening dresses vanished through the revolving doors. Dante moved in front of Clara so fast she barely saw him do it. His body became a wall between her and the street. "Inside the car," he said. This time she did not argue. She slid into the Escalade, breath shaking, soaked apron cold against her skin. Dante climbed in after her. Luca threw the small photo frame into her lap and slammed the door as another shot struck metal. The vehicle surged forward before Clara had fastened her seatbelt. She grabbed the handle above the door with one hand and the photo with the other. Dante sat beside her, calm in a way that did not feel human. He spoke into his phone, giving orders in short, quiet sentences. Streets, names, exits. 2 men to the truck, 1 to the hotel kitchen. Lock down the alley. Find who handled the boxes. No sirens unless necessary. No bodies near civilians. His voice had no panic in it. That should have comforted her. It did not. It made her realize this was not the worst thing he had seen. Maybe not even close. Clara looked down at her father's photograph. Rainwater had smeared the edge. Marvin Hughes smiled up at her, flour on his cheek, one hand raised as if someone had caught him mid-joke. Her vision blurred, and she hated herself for it. She had yelled at a mafia boss, survived a shooting, and now a wet picture was going to break her. Dante ended the call and looked at her. "Are you hurt?" "No." "Look at me." I said no. Clara. Her name in his voice felt different inside the dark car. Too careful, too intimate, too much for a stranger. She looked at him anyway. "I'm not hurt." His eyes moved across her face, down to her hands, then to the photograph she was holding like a wound. "Your father." She nodded once. "He made the cannoli you murdered famous." Dante was silent. Then, very softly, he said, I am sorry about the cannoli. A laugh broke out of her before she could stop it. It was small and cracked, and almost a sob. She pressed her fingers to her mouth. Dante looked away, giving her the privacy of pretending not to notice. That was the second mercy. The Escalade crossed the bridge out of the city, rain streaking sideways across the windows. Manhattan blurred behind them in silver and red. Clara had spent her whole life in Queens, working, hustling, surviving, learning the moods of ovens and customers and streets. She knew which markets gave discounts near closing, which cops ignored food truck parking after midnight, which intersections flooded first. She knew how to stretch pastry cream, how to smile at rude brides, how to fix the truck's starter with a wrench and a prayer. She did not know how to sit beside Dante Marino while armed men followed behind them, and enemies she had never met learned her name. After a long time, she said, "Where are you taking me?" "My estate." She turned slowly. "Of course you have an estate. Oyster Bay. Of course it's in Oyster Bay. It is secure. I'm sure Dracula said that about his castle." Dante looked at her. The faintest trace of that almost smile returned. "You talk when you are frightened. I talk all the time. It's one of my cheaper hobbies." "You are frightened." "Yes," she said, because lying felt too heavy now. "But I am also angry, and anger has seniority." His gaze stayed on her for a second too long. "Good." "Good?" "Fear makes people freeze. Anger keeps them awake. I don't need mafia wisdom. I need my truck, my invoice paid, and my life back. I can help with the first two. And the third?" Dante looked out the window. Reflections moved over his face, slicing it into darkness and passing light. "That depends on what is on the drive." The estate appeared nearly an hour later, rising beyond iron gates and rain-black trees like something from another century. Clara leaned toward the window despite herself. The house was huge, all stone and glass and warm lights glowing through the storm. Security cameras turned above the gate. Guards stepped out of a booth, recognized the car, and waved them through without smiling. The driveway curved past gardens silvered by rain, and a fountain shaped like angels who looked too serious about water. "Subtle," Clara said. "My mother chose the fountain." "Then your mother has dramatic taste." She would agree. Something changed in his voice when he said mother. A thread of warmth, hidden quickly but not quickly enough. The car stopped beneath a covered entrance. The doors opened before Clara touched the handle. A woman in her 60s stood waiting inside the doorway with a cane in one hand and a silk scarf wrapped around her shoulders. Her face was pale and lined from illness, one side of her mouth slightly weaker than the other, but her eyes were sharp enough to cut ribbon. Two staff members hovered behind her like nervous birds. "Dante," the woman said, voice rough but clear. "You bring home a wet baker and no dessert?" Dante closed his eyes for half a second. "Mama." Clara looked from him to the woman, and forgot, briefly, to be afraid. Rosa Marino studied her from the doorway. Then her gaze dropped to Clara's soaked apron, the ruined box still somehow clutched under one arm, and the powdered sugar on her cheek. Rosa smiled, not politely, not kindly, with delight. "Oh," she said, "this one looks like trouble." Clara should have introduced herself with grace. She should have remembered she was standing in a mafia estate after being shot at because someone had hidden a flash drive in her dessert boxes. Instead, tiredness, fear, and rainwater loosened her tongue. "With respect," Clara said, "your son started it." For the second time that night, Dante Marino's entire house went silent. Then Rosa Marino laughed so hard, one of the staff members rushed forward, as if laughter might be medically dangerous. Rosa waved her away, still smiling at Clara, like she had just been handed a gift no one had known how to wrap. Dante looked between them, expression unreadable, and Clara, standing wet and exhausted beneath a chandelier worth more than her truck, had the strange and terrible feeling that whatever had begun outside the Grand Aurelia Hotel had not ended when she climbed into his car. It had only opened the door. By sunrise, the wet baker from Queens had stolen the Mafia Boss's kitchen, insulted his coffee, and found the first lie hidden inside his house. Clara did not mean to do any of those things. She had meant to survive the night, keep her mouth shut until someone returned her truck, and stay awake long enough to make sure no one in Dante Marino's beautiful stone mansion decided that protection was just another word for being locked away. But fear had never made her quiet. It made her busy, so when Dante left her in a guest room bigger than her whole apartment and told 2 guards to stand outside her door, Clara waited exactly 4 minutes before opening it again and asking if the men planned to breathe that loudly all night. The younger guard blinked at her. The older one looked at the ceiling like he had been assigned to watch a weather event. "Mr. Marino asked us to keep you safe," he said. "Great. You can keep me safe while I find coffee. The kitchen staff can bring it up. I don't want coffee that travels through a chain of command. I want coffee that knows where it came from." The younger guard's mouth twitched. "Ma'am, we can't let you wander." Clara folded her arms. Her borrowed robe was too long, the sleeves swallowed her hands, and her damp curls had dried into a shape that looked less romantic and more like a broom with opinions. She knew she did not look intimidating. She also knew most people made the mistake of confusing soft edges with soft will. "Listen, sweetheart, I got shot at outside a hotel, kidnapped by rich furniture on wheels, brought to a house guarded like a president's bad dream, and handed a nightgown that probably has a trust fund. I am not going back to bed before coffee." From somewhere down the hall, a voice said, "Let her through." Dante stood near the staircase, in a black shirt, with the sleeves rolled to his forearms. He looked like he had not slept. Of course, he looked unfairly handsome while exhausted. Men like him probably had cheekbones listed under business assets. His eyes moved over her once, not in a way that made her feel small, but in a way that checked for damage. Clara hated how carefully he did it. Careful men were dangerous in a different way. They made you lower your weapon before you realized they had one. "You should be resting," he said. "You should be apologizing to whatever tailor made that shirt, because clearly it's under pressure." The younger guard made a coughing sound and turned toward the wall. Dante's expression remained still, but Clara saw the little shift at the corner of his mouth. "The kitchen is downstairs. I know. I smelled cinnamon. That would be my mother's breakfast." "Your mother eats cinnamon for breakfast. My mother eats whatever her doctor tells her not to eat, then blames me for the existence of doctors." Despite herself, Clara smiled. "I like her. You have known her for 6 minutes." She laughed at my joke. "That gives her seniority over most of Manhattan." Dante turned and led her downstairs. Clara followed, trying not to stare too openly at the house. The Marino estate did not look lived in at first. It looked curated: dark wood, white walls, deep carpets, oil paintings of dead relatives who appeared disappointed in everyone, tall windows facing gardens pale with morning mist. But the deeper she walked, the more human details appeared: a stack of medical magazines near a sitting room, a blanket folded over a chair beside the fireplace, a silver cane leaning against a side table, a tray of pill bottles arranged with almost military neatness. The house was not only rich, it was waiting around an illness. That softened something in her before she could stop it. The kitchen was warm, wide and bright, with copper pans hanging above a marble island and enough counter space to land a small aircraft. 2 cooks stopped moving when Dante entered. Rosa sat near the window in a soft blue sweater, one hand curled around a porcelain cup, her cane resting beside her chair. The right side of her face still held the faint weakness of the stroke, but her eyes were alive with trouble. "There she is," Rosa said. "The cannoli warrior." Clara placed a hand over her heart. "Finally, a title worthy of my suffering." Rosa laughed. Dante looked at the ceiling, as if asking it for strength. A plate sat in front of Rosa with one lonely slice of toast, half a grapefruit, and something beige in a bowl that looked like punishment. Clara frowned. "What is that?" "Oatmeal," Dante said. "No, it isn't. Oatmeal has hope. That looks like wallpaper paste with abandonment issues." Rosa tapped the table. "See, she understands." Dante's voice lowered. "Mama?" "No, let the baker speak." Clara looked at the cooks. "Do you have oats, apples, cinnamon, Greek yogurt, honey, and walnuts?" One cook glanced at Dante. Dante did not answer. He watched Clara instead, as if curious which law she planned to break first. "I can make something low sugar," Clara said. "Not joyless, just respectful of medical advice. There's a difference." Rosa pointed at Dante. "I have told him this. My son thinks food should follow orders," Rosa said. "Food should flirt a little." Clara grinned. "Exactly." Dante looked between them with the expression of a man realizing he had made a strategic error by bringing two dangerous women into the same room. 10 minutes later, Clara had rolled up her sleeves and taken over half the island. She moved differently in a kitchen. The clumsy tension she had carried through the hallway disappeared. Her hands became quick, sure, gentle. She toasted oats until the air smelled warm and nutty, softened apples with cinnamon, folded yogurt with a thread of honey, and crushed walnuts beneath the side of a knife. She spoke while she worked, because silence felt too heavy in that house. She told Rosa about the time her father accidentally delivered a wedding cake to a funeral, and the widow decided to keep it because her husband would have found it funny. She told her about queens in the summer, about kids buying honey lemon cupcakes with quarters, about the food truck generator that sounded like an old man arguing with a lawnmower. Rosa listened like each small story mattered. Dante listened like he had forgotten he was allowed to. When Clara set the bowl in front of Rosa, Rosa tasted one spoonful and closed her eyes. "Dante," she said, "hire her." Clara nearly dropped the spoon. "No." Dante looked at her. "I did not offer. You looked like you were about to." "I often look like I am about to do many things. Try doing fewer. It'll be refreshing." Rosa smiled into her bowl. "Oh, I am keeping this one." "No one is keeping anyone," Clara said quickly. The words came out sharper than she meant. The kitchen quieted. Even Rosa's spoon paused. Dante's gaze changed, and Clara cursed herself silently. She had not meant to show him that nerve, but the word had touched something raw. Keeping. Men kept cars, houses, secrets. Women sometimes, if the world let them call it love. Dante did not move closer. "You are a guest here," he said. "I am a witness in danger." "Yes." "Then say that. Don't dress it up." "You are a witness in danger," he said. "You are also a guest." Clara studied him, waiting for the command hidden under the manners. It did not come. That made her uneasy. After breakfast, he brought her to a library with tall shelves, locked cabinets, and a long table already covered with laptops, maps, printed photographs, and the small black flash drive sealed inside a clear evidence bag. Luca stood near the wall with two other men. They all looked at Clara the way men looked at a woman they believed had accidentally wandered into a room where serious things happened. She knew that look too well. Dante stood at the head of the table. "The drive is encrypted. My people are working on it. Your people look like they eat passwords for protein," Clara said. One of the men blinked. Luca almost smiled. Dante continued as if she had not spoken. "Until we know what is on it, we assume Russo's network believes you are connected. I'm connected to butter, unpaid invoices, and a mechanic named Sal who lies when he says parts are cheap. Tell us everyone who handled your order." Clara sat without being invited because standing made people feel like they were allowed to tower. She pulled a legal pad toward herself. "Fine, but we're doing this my way." Luca glanced at Dante. Dante's eyes stayed on her. "Your way?" "Yes." "Your way probably involves a lot of staring, threatening, and saying last names like they're death sentences. My way involves receipts. For the next hour, Clara rebuilt the whole delivery from memory. The catering order had come through a luxury event coordinator named Bellamy Slate. The desserts were charged to a charity account connected to the Moretti Pediatric Recovery Fund, which was odd because the event had been hosted under another name. A hotel runner had told her the service alley was blocked, but the construction permit taped to the fence had yesterday's date on it. A man in a grey raincoat had helped pick up one fallen box near the loading zone and then vanished before she could thank him. The fake strawberry box had not matched her packaging stock. Its cardboard was smoother, more expensive. Its ribbon was wrong. Its label, she realized with a sudden chill, had used the old Hughes and Honey logo, the one from before her father died. Dante leaned forward. How old? 8 months? Maybe 9. I changed the label after I inherited the truck. Her voice softened despite herself. Dad's version had a little B in the corner. I took it off because printing costs went up, Luca said, so whoever made the fake box used an older sample, or a photo from an old catering post, Clara said. People screenshot everything, but the order form had my current logo. That means the box came from somewhere else. Dante looked at one of his men. Pull every public image of Hughes and Honey packaging from the past year. Find who downloaded, reposted, or used them in event boards. The man typed quickly. Clara stared at him. You can do that. Dante's eyes returned to her. Yes. Creepy. Useful, but creepy. Many things are both. By noon, she had forgotten to be intimidated. By 1, Dante's men had stopped looking at her like a civilian problem and started looking at her like a map they had not known how to read. She explained how catering routes worked, how fake delivery companies hid behind rented vans, how vendors took cash jobs through side texts, how hotel kitchens recorded outside food differently depending on insurance, how a shell company could move money by pretending to buy perishables. She knew the underbelly of small business because she had lived inside it. Not crime. Survival. The kind where people traded favors, paid late, rounded numbers, and prayed no one important checked the paperwork. Then she saw the invoice. It was 1 page, in a stack of many, printed from a vendor Dante's men had tied to Russo. Clara reached across the table and pulled it free. This is fake. Luca leaned over. How do you know? Vanilla. Dante looked at her. Vanilla. She tapped the line item. Madagascar vanilla paste. 12 gallons. No dessert truck in Queens is buying 12 gallons of this, unless they're making cupcakes for the moon. Also, the unit price is wrong. Too cheap for real paste. Too expensive for extract. That means the number isn't for ingredients. It's a cover amount. The room went very quiet. Dante took the invoice from her gently. What else? She flipped through the stack. Almond flour. Wrong supplier. Cocoa butter. Wrong season pricing. Disposable trays. Too many. Honey. Way too much honey. Whoever made these wanted the invoices to look sweet and harmless. They are moving money through catering orders, Luca said. Clara nodded. And using small vendors because nobody respects us enough to look closely. Dante's jaw tightened. I respect what is useful. She looked up. That's not the same as respecting people. The words slipped out before she could soften them. Luca looked down at the table. The typing stopped. Dante held her gaze. It would have been easy for him to become cold then. Men did it all the time when truth arrived without a bow. Instead, he said, No, it is not. Clara looked away first. That was the beginning of something she did not trust. The days that followed gathered around her in strange layers. Dante's estate became less like a prison and more like a storm shelter with chandeliers. Her truck was brought to the property and hidden in a service garage. The front end looked worse in daylight, but her father's photograph had dried safely on her nightstand. Luca arranged repairs without asking, and Clara wrote down every cost because she intended to pay back anything beyond accident damage, no matter how much Dante ignored the notebook. Her phone rang with missed calls from vendors, event planners, and one debt collector whose cheerful voicemail made her want to throw the device into the fountain. Dante offered to handle it once. Clara stared at him until he raised both hands and said nothing else. Rosa became her favorite problem. The older woman refused to do therapy exercises unless Clara sat with her. She complained in 2 languages, accused Dante of being too handsome to be useful, and demanded desserts that would not make her doctor sigh into his clipboard. Clara started making low-sugar orange ricotta cups, cinnamon pear crisps, almond cookies with half the sweetness and all the attitude. Rosa called them medicine for the soul. Dante called them bribery. Clara told him bribery seemed to run in his social circle. At night, the house changed. During the day, men came and went in dark suits. Phones rang behind closed doors. Dante disappeared into meetings where voices stayed low and endings felt implied. But after dinner, the estate softened. Rosa watched old movies in the sitting room. Clara worked in the kitchen because stillness made her think too much. Dante began appearing there without announcing himself. The first time, she found him standing in the doorway while she kneaded dough for sweet rolls. "Do you always lurk like a haunted painting?" she asked. "I live here. That doesn't answer my question." His eyes lowered to her hands. "You bake when you are worried. I bake when I'm awake. You have been awake too much. So have you." He stepped inside, but did not come too close. That became his pattern. Near, but not trapping. Present, but not pressing. It annoyed her, because it was harder to fight than arrogance. "You should sleep," he said. "You should stop telling adults when to sleep. I tell dangerous men when to die. Sleep is polite by comparison." Clara looked at him over the dough. "Do you hear yourself when you say things like that? Or does the dramatic music in your head drown it out?" There it was again, that almost smile. She should not have liked earning it. Later he brought coffee without asking. Strong, hot, with a little cream and no sugar. Exactly right. Clara stared at the cup suspiciously. "How did you know? You complained yesterday that everyone either burns coffee or turns it into dessert soup. You were listening? Yes, that's unsettling. You talk loudly. I talk at a normal volume. Your house is just emotionally repressed." He placed the cup on the counter. "Drink." She lifted one eyebrow. "Please," he added, like the word had dust on it. Clara took the coffee and hated how warmth spread through her chest before the first sip. Their almost kiss happened on the 5th night, and was entirely the fault of his terrible tie. Dante was leaving for a meeting in the city, dressed in a dark suit that fit him like power had hired a tailor. Clara was walking Rosa back from the sitting room when Dante came down the stairs, adjusting a black tie that had somehow twisted wrong near the collar. Rosa made a disgusted sound. "You look like a handsome tax audit," Clara said. Dante stopped on the last stair. Rosa laughed behind her hand. "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means expensive, stressful, and badly folded. My tie is fine. Your tie is committing a crime." Before she could overthink it, Clara stepped closer and reached up. Dante went still. Not stiff exactly, still like an animal, deciding whether to run or let itself be touched. The difference mattered. She loosened the knot, straightened the silk, and smoothed it down with her fingers. His throat moved once. He smelled like cedar, rain, and something darker, something warm beneath the polish. "There," she said, but her voice had gone softer than she wanted. Dante looked down at her. For one breath, the whole house seemed to hold still. Rosa was behind them. Guards waited near the door. The city was full of enemies, and a flash drive upstairs had not yet given up all its secrets. None of that changed the fact that Dante Marino was looking at Clara like she was the only honest thing he had seen in years. His hand lifted, slowly enough that she could move away. She did not. His fingers touched one curl near her cheek, barely, as if removing a ghost of powdered sugar that was no longer there. "You are not afraid enough of me," he said. Clarara's breath caught. "Maybe you're not as scary as you think." His eyes darkened. "I am exactly as scary as people think. Not to me. That is what scares me." The words landed between them, quiet and dangerous. Clarara forgot her joke. Dante's gaze dropped to her mouth. Then Rosa cleared her throat loudly enough to shame the walls. "If you kiss her before your meeting, fix your face after. Men will know." Clarara jumped back so fast she nearly tripped over the rug. Dante turned his head toward his mother, and for the first time Clarara saw him look almost helpless. Rosa smiled sweetly. "Go do crime. Come home early." "I do not do crime before dinner," Dante said. "You do not do dinner enough either." He left with Luca 2 minutes later. Clara spent the next hour pretending not to touch the place near her cheek where his fingers had been. The flash drive finally opened on the 7th day. Dante did not call her into the library at first. She found out because the house changed temperature. Men moved faster. Doors closed harder. Rosa watched her son's face and said nothing. Clara walked straight to the library and pushed the door open without knocking. Dante looked up from the table. "You should not be here." There it is. My least favorite sentence. "This is dangerous." I was there when the danger arrived in my pastry box. Luca stood near the screen, face grim. On it were files, payment chains, names, delivery routes, security schedules, and photographs taken from distances that made Clarara's skin crawl. One showed Dante entering a private club. One showed Russo with a councilman. One showed a warehouse near the river. And one showed Dominic Rossi, Dante's trusted underboss, standing beside Victor Russo in a parking garage. Dante's face was carved from stone. Clarara knew betrayal when she saw it, not because she had lived in Dante's world, but because betrayal had a universal shape. It made the body quiet first. The pain came after. "Dominic," she said softly. Luca looked at her. "You know him?" "I know he sits 2 seats down from Dante at dinner and tells Rosa stories about Sicily." Dante did not speak. On the table near his hand was another printed invoice. Clarara recognized the fake vanilla supplier immediately. But this one had something different. A delivery address connected to a charity gala scheduled in 3 days. The Bellamy Slate Foundation. The same coordinator who had ordered Clarara's desserts. A high-profile event full of donors, judges, and men who would smile at devils if the cameras were bright enough. "They are meeting there," Clarara said. Dante finally looked at her. She pointed to the invoice. "Not openly, but look at the delivery windows. 3 catering companies, 2 florists, 1 lighting vendor, all scheduled through side entrances within 12 minutes of each other. That's not event planning. That's traffic cover." Luca leaned in. "Russo moves through the vendor route, and Dominic helps him get close," Clarara said. Dante's voice was low. "Close to whom?" No one answered, because everyone already knew. Close to Dante. The plan formed slowly, then all at once. The gala was too public for violence if handled carefully, too important for Russo to ignore, too polished for Dominic to resist. Dante would attend as expected, let them believe he suspected nothing, and use the event to expose the money trail, the vendor network, and Dominic's leak. Clarara was supposed to stay at the estate. She laughed so loudly one of Dante's men flinched. "No." Dante's eyes narrowed. "No. No. We've done this word before. I like it. It fits me. You are not going to that gala. I am the only one who can read the catering movement fast enough. My men can learn. In 3 days? Cute. You were shot at. And now I'm invested. This is not a business dispute. No, it's a business dispute with guns and better shoes." Dante stepped closer. "Russo may recognize you. Good. Let him wonder why I'm not hiding. You think courage makes you safe." "No," she said. "I think being treated like furniture makes me angry." His mouth closed. Clarara took a breath. and made herself say the part that mattered. You said I was a guest and a witness. Fine. Then don't turn me into a prisoner when I become inconvenient. I can help. You know I can. So either treat me like a partner in the problem I got dragged into, or admit you only respect my brain when it stays inside your walls. Dante looked at her for a long time. The room waited. At last he said, "You will not leave my side." That sounds controlling. That is tactical. It can be both. His jaw tightened. Then he nodded once, almost to himself. "You are right." Luca looked briefly stunned. Dante continued, "You come as my guest, publicly. No one touches you. No one separates you from me. If you feel unsafe, you say so once, and we leave. And if you feel bossy, I roll my eyes and continue saving your empire through baked goods literacy." Rosa's voice came from the doorway. "She will need a dress." Everyone turned. Rosa stood there with her cane, smiling like the gala had been invented for her entertainment. Clarara's stomach dropped. "No." Rosa's smile widened. "Yes, I have dresses." "For what? A cousin's barbecue?" "That is a valid social setting." Rosa looked her up and down with the focus of a general inspecting troops. "You will not enter a room full of snakes looking like an apology. You will enter looking like dessert before the knife." Clara blinked. "That is either beautiful or terrifying." "Both," Dante said quietly. The dress arrived the next afternoon from a designer who spoke very fast and did not once use the word slimming, which Clara appreciated enough not to bite him. It was deep, wine-colored satin, with soft sleeves, a fitted waist, and a skirt that moved when she breathed. Clara expected to hate it. Instead, when she stood before the mirror, she went silent. She had spent years dressing like the goal was to take up less space. Dark clothes, safe shapes, nothing that invited comments, nothing that gave people permission to discuss her body like a public event. This dress did not make her smaller. It did not apologize for her hips, her belly, her arms, her softness. It held her like she was allowed to be seen. Rosa sat behind her, eyes suspiciously bright. "There," Clara swallowed. "It's too much." "No," Rosa said. "You were taught to expect too little." Clara looked down before the mirror could catch too much feeling. That evening, Dante saw her at the foot of the stairs. He stopped walking. Just stopped. Luca bumped lightly into his back and wisely said nothing. Clara lifted her chin because vulnerability made her sarcastic. "If you say something stupid, I'm going back upstairs." Dante's eyes moved over her slowly, but not like the men who had made her hate being looked at. His gaze did not measure. It received, like she had entered the room and changed what the room was for. "You look," he said, then stopped. "Careful." His voice lowered. "Unforgettable." That was worse than pretty, worse than beautiful, worse because it sounded like a problem he did not want solved. Clara's face warmed. "Good, because I cannot breathe enough in this dress to be forgettable." Rosa called from the sitting room. "Suffering is temporary. Entrance is forever." The gala glittered like a lie. It filled a ballroom near Central Park with gold light, white flowers, champagne towers, and people who laughed softly because wealth disliked effort. Clara entered with Dante's hand resting at the small of her back, not pushing, not owning, just present. Every head turned, some because they recognized Dante, some because they did not recognize her, some because she was not the kind of woman they expected on the arm of a man like him, and their confusion arrived dressed as politeness. Clara smiled at them all, let them choke gracefully. Dante leaned close. "You are enjoying this. I am enjoying their math failing." "What math?" "Men like you are supposed to arrive with women who look expensive and hungry. You look expensive. I look well-fed and dangerous." His eyes almost smiled. "Yes." For half the night, they played the part. Dante introduced her as his guest. Clara corrected him once and said partner, just to watch three men forget how to blink. She laughed at donors' jokes, asked sharp little questions about catering invoices, and let arrogant men underestimate her, right up until they handed her information, because they assumed a fat woman near dessert was decoration. She learned that the lighting company had changed trucks that morning, that Bellamy Slate had approved a last-minute vendor substitution, that Dominic Rossi had requested a private room near the service corridor, that Russo was in the building under another man's invitation. Dante watched her own the room. At first he watched with concern, then with surprise, then with something deeper and quieter that made Clara's skin feel too warm beneath the satin. He saw men dismiss her and then lean closer because she made them laugh. He saw women glance at her dress and then ask where she got it. He saw a senator's aide accidentally reveal that Russo's people had been promised access to the west elevator. Clara did not force information out of anyone. She made people comfortable enough to become careless. Near the dessert table, Dante bent close to her ear. "You are very good at this." She kept her smile on the room. At being underestimated? Years of practice. His hand tightened slightly at her back, then relaxed. "They are fools." "Yes," she said, "but tonight they're useful fools." A camera flashed. Someone called Dante's name. Without thinking, Clara turned toward him, and Dante drew her closer for the photograph. It was supposed to be fake, tactical, a performance for Russo, Dominic, and anyone reporting back. But Dante's hand settled at her waist, and Clara's palm landed against his chest, and for one breath, neither of them remembered to act. His heart was beating hard. That changed everything. Dangerous men were easier to resist when you imagined them hollow. Dante was not hollow. He was exhausted, angry, loyal, terrified for his mother, careful with her when he did not have to be. A man raised inside violence who still knew how to stop his hand before it became a cage. Clara looked up at him. Dante. His name came out too soft. His eyes dropped to her mouth. Then Luca appeared at his side, voice low. "Dominic is moving." The moment broke, but not cleanly. It left heat behind. Dante straightened. "Where?" "West corridor. Russo's man just entered through catering." Clara turned toward the service doors. A server passed carrying a tray of champagne, his jacket slightly too tight across the shoulders. She saw a white tag near his cuff. Wrong color. The hotel staff wore cream labels. Vendor staff wore blue. His was white with a gold line. "That one," she whispered. "He doesn't belong." The man looked up. Their eyes met. His hand moved under the tray. Dante pulled Clara behind him as Luca crossed the room fast. The server abandoned the tray and disappeared through the service door. Champagne glasses shattered across the marble. Guests gasped. Music continued for 3 confused seconds before stopping. Dante's face went cold. Clara gripped his sleeve. "He saw me." Dante looked down at her, and whatever softness had existed between them vanished beneath something deadly. Not toward her. For her. Across the ballroom, Dominic Rossi stood near a pillar, phone in hand. He was not looking at Dante. He was looking at Clara, and for the first time since the rain outside the hotel, Clara felt the full shape of the danger she had walked into. Not because men wanted money. Not because criminals wanted power, but because she had become visible inside a world that punished anyone who saw too much. Dante moved closer, shielding her from the room without making it look like fear. "Stay beside me," he said. Clara's voice shook only once. "I thought that was the plan." "It still is." But Dominic was already walking toward the exit, and somewhere in the bright, beautiful ballroom, behind flowers and champagne and smiling faces, Victor Russo had learned that Dante Marino's weakness was not his empire. It was the woman who had arrived with ruined cannoli and refused to be small. Russo learned Dante Marino had a weakness, and by midnight, half the city seemed to be waiting to see if that weakness could bleed. Clara felt it before anyone said it out loud. The gala did not end with screams or sirens or bodies on the marble floor. It ended worse than that. It ended with smiles returning too quickly, music beginning again too softly, and dangerous men pretending the shattered champagne glasses near the service door were only an accident. Rich people loved explanations that let them keep drinking. Dante stood beside Clara in the ballroom, with one hand near her back, and murder sleeping behind his eyes, while waiters swept glass into silver pans, and the host told the guests there had been a small staffing issue. A staffing issue. Clara almost laughed. She had seen a man reach under a tray, like he meant to pull death out from beneath the glasses, and the room had decided it was a staffing issue because the flowers were expensive, and no one wanted fear on their silk shoes. Dominic Rossi vanished before Dante's men could close every exit. The fake server disappeared into the hotel service maze. Russo did not show his face. That was the part Clara hated most. She understood men like that in a strange, ordinary way. Men who hid behind other people's hands were everywhere. Some ran crime networks. Some ran banks. Some ran catering departments and blamed missing checks on clerical delays. Some smiled at women like Clara and called them sweetheart before stealing their time. Cowards had different suits, but the same smell. Dante did not drag her out of the ballroom. That mattered. She knew it mattered because every line of his body wanted to. His men formed a loose circle near them, Luca speaking into his earpiece, two others watching the entrances, but Dante looked at Clara first. "Do you want to leave?" The question surprised her so much, she almost answered honestly too quickly. Her body wanted to leave. Her feet ached in Rosa's beautiful shoes. Her dress suddenly felt too bright, too visible, too easy to aim at. The room was full of strangers who had just watched her become part of a story they would retell incorrectly by morning. But she also saw Dominic's empty place near the pillar. She saw the side door closing at the far end of the hall. She saw Bellamy Slate laughing too hard with a councilman, while her fingers shook around a champagne flute. Clara had spent years knowing when people were lying about invoices. People lied with their mouths, but they confessed with their hands. "No," she said. Dante's jaw tightened. "Clara, if we leave now, they learn I scare easily. You were nearly attacked." And he ran. "I'm still here. That is not a victory. It is information." His eyes held hers, dark and fierce. "You are not bait." "I didn't say I was." "You are thinking it." "I'm thinking Bellamy Slate knows something. She hasn't looked at the service door once since the tray dropped. That means she already knew where he went, or she is trying too hard not to know. Either way, she's our thread." Dante turned slightly, following her gaze. Bellamy stood near a flower arch, blonde hair smooth, diamonds glittering at her ears, face arranged in a soft charity hostess smile. To most of the room she looked elegant and concerned. To Clara she looked like a woman calculating whether the kitchen staff would talk. Dante leaned close enough that his voice touched only Clara. "Stay where Luca can reach you. You say romantic things like a hostage negotiator. After tonight I may become one." She wanted to make another joke. She really did. But his voice had something under it that quieted her. Not anger, not command. Fear. For her. Dante Marino, who could make half of New York step off a sidewalk by lifting his eyes, was afraid because of a dessert truck baker in a wine-colored dress. The thought should have felt ridiculous. Instead, it settled in her chest like a match near dry paper. They crossed the room together. Dante spoke to donors as if nothing had happened, but Clara felt the room bending around him. Men smiled too wide. Women watched his hand at her back. Bellamy saw them coming and turned brighter, which was always the first sign someone was about to lie. "Dante," Bellamy said, "I'm so sorry for the disturbance. We'll be reviewing all staffing procedures, of course." "Of course," Dante said. Clara smiled. "Your dessert route was interesting tonight," Bellamy blinked. "I'm sorry?" 3 different delivery windows moved within the hour. That's hard to do. Most kitchens would collapse into crying and garnish. Bellamy's smile cooled by 1 degree. Events of this size require flexibility. Sure, but usually flexibility leaves emails. Dante said nothing. He only watched Bellamy, and somehow his silence made Clarara's words sharper. Bellamy glanced around as if looking for rescue. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Maybe nothing," Clarara said. "Maybe I'm just sensitive about catering paperwork since someone used my business to move a flash drive." Bellamy's face did not change enough for most people to notice. Clarara noticed. 1 eyelid fluttered. 1 finger tapped the glass. 1 breath came too shallow. Dante noticed Clarara noticing. "You should be careful," Bellamy said softly. Clarara tilted her head. "People keep telling me that like it's a personality tip." Bellamy's smile vanished for half a second. "Russo is not the sort of man you want remembering your name." There it was. Dante moved before Bellamy realized what she had given away. Not toward her throat, not toward violence. He simply stepped closer, and the space around Bellamy seemed to lose air. "How do you know Russo remembers her name?" Bellamy went pale. The councilman beside her suddenly found urgent interest in the ceiling. Clarara looked at Bellamy's hand again. No glass now. Her fingers were empty and trembling. "I assumed," Bellamy whispered. Dante's voice stayed calm. "No, you warned." Bellamy looked at Clarara then, and for the first time, there was no polished cruelty in her face, only fear. "I was told it was only a transfer," she said. "A message hidden in a vendor route. That's all. I didn't know they would shoot outside the hotel. I didn't know they would try something tonight." "Who told you?" Dante asked. Bellamy's eyes filled. "Dominic." The name landed softly. That made it worse. Dante did not react. Clara wished he had. Anger would have been easier to watch than that terrible stillness. Dominic had eaten at his table. Dominic had kissed Rosa's hand. Dominic had stood behind Dante like loyalty had a face. And now his name was lying on the marble between them, like a body no one wanted to touch. Bellamy kept talking, because fear made people generous. Dominic had needed access to the gala vendor system. He had asked Bellamy to approve substitutions, shift delivery windows, and keep certain service corridors open. He had told her it was about moving money away from Russo, not toward him. He had told her Dante knew. He had told her everyone would benefit if she did not ask too many questions. Men always knew which lie fit which person. Bellamy was vain enough to believe she had been chosen for importance, and frightened enough to follow orders once she realized she had not. By the time Dante stepped away from her, Luca already had the information moving through their network. Names, corridors, vendor companies, phone numbers. Bellamy's panic had opened the first clean door, but Dominic was gone, and Russo had seen Clarara. The ride back to the estate was quiet. Clarara sat beside Dante in the back of the SUV and watched the city lights smear across the tinted windows. She wanted to ask him what he was thinking. She wanted to tell him not to become stone just because a man had cracked something human inside him. Instead, she held her father's little photo in her purse and counted the bridges of her own breath. Dante finally spoke when the city had thinned into dark roads and wet trees. "I should have kept you at the estate." "No. You could have died tonight. So could you. That is different. There it is again." He turned to her. "What?" "That thing powerful men do when they decide their lives are public property and everyone else's life is something to manage." His face hardened. "I am trying to keep you alive." "I know. Then do not fight me on every wall I build. Walls keep danger out. They also keep people in." His mouth closed. Clarara looked away before she softened. She was tired. She was too tired to hold his pain and her fear and all the strange tenderness growing between them like a plant in a cracked sidewalk. But when he spoke again, his voice was lower. "Dominic knows my mother's medical schedule." Clara turned back slowly. Dante looked out the window. He arranged most of her security during recovery. Hospital transfers, therapy appointments, doctor visits. He knows routes, Backups, private entrances. A cold feeling moved under her skin. Then change everything. I will. But she heard the part he did not say. Changing everything did not erase what had already been shared. It did not erase the old patterns, the old files, the familiar habits. Betrayal was not dangerous only because of what a traitor did next. It was dangerous because of everything he had already been allowed to know. At the estate, Rosa was waiting in the sitting room, pretending not to be waiting. She wore a robe over her nightgown and held a book upside down. Clara saw it immediately. "You are an awful actress," Clara said. Rosa lowered the book. "And you are late." There was light murder-adjacent nonsense. Rosa looked at Dante. "Did you win?" "Not yet," he said. "Then why are you home?" Clara laughed before she could stop herself. Dante looked at his mother with the weary patience of a man who had lost this argument in childhood and every year since. He bent to kiss Rosa's forehead. She caught his wrist with her weaker hand. "Do not become your father tonight," Rosa said quietly. The room changed. Dante went still. Rosa's eyes softened, but her grip did not. "Your father thought love meant locking doors before anyone asked to leave. Do not make his mistakes with better clothes." Dante did not answer. He only nodded once, then left the room. Clara watched him go, and Rosa watched Clara. "He cares for you," Rosa said. Clara folded her arms. "He barely knows me." Rosa gave her a look that only older women recovering from strokes and raising dangerous sons could give. Men like Dante know enemies in seconds. Love takes them longer because they do not trust anything that does not arrive with a weapon. That is not comforting. No, but it is true. The next 2 days passed in a strange, restless blur. Dante moved the estate into a quiet lockdown without using the word. Guards changed shifts. Cars changed plates. Rosa's hospital appointment was moved from Thursday morning to Wednesday afternoon, then changed again to a private wing with a different entrance. Clara watched it all, while pretending not to notice how often Dante's eyes found her across rooms. He did not ask her to stay away from the planning anymore. That felt like progress. He also placed 2 extra guards near her whenever she walked to the garage to check on her truck. That felt like Dante. Her truck sat under bright service lights, hood open, looking embarrassed by all the attention. A mechanic from one of Dante's legal businesses had replaced the tires, repaired the hood, fixed the headlight, and discovered 3 other problems Clara had been ignoring because denial was free. She stood beside it with a clipboard and wrote down every repair. Dante appeared at the garage entrance. "Still making your debt list? It's called accounting. I told you I would cover it, and I told you my pride has claws. Your brakes were unsafe. My brakes had personality. They had a death wish." She looked at him over the clipboard. "So do half your friends." The joke landed closer to the wound than she meant. Dante looked at the truck instead of her. Clara lowered the clipboard. "I'm sorry." "No. You are right. I was being cute. You usually are when you are correct." That shut her up, which seemed to surprise both of them. He stepped closer to the truck and touched the faded Hughes and Honey logo with 2 fingers. "Your father painted this?" "We both did. He did the letters. I did the honeycomb pattern because he said my hands were steadier." "They are." She looked down at her hands. "Only in kitchens." "No," Dante said. "Not only." The softness in his voice made the garage feel too quiet. Clara wanted to make a joke about him sounding like a perfume commercial. She could not find one fast enough. The hospital ambush came the next afternoon in an underground VIP garage that smelled like concrete, rainwater, and too many secrets. Clara had not been supposed to come. Rosa had insisted. That was the official version, at least. The truth was that Rosa hated hospitals, and had decided Clara's ability to insult beige oatmeal gave her medicinal value. Dante argued for exactly 7 minutes before Rosa threatened to tell his security team embarrassing stories from his teenage years. Clara watched him lose with grace and a clenched jaw. "Do not look pleased," he told her as they left the estate. I would never enjoy your mother defeating you in under 10 minutes. You are smiling. My face is independent. The drive to the hospital was smooth. Too smooth, Clara thought later. The changed route, the decoy car, the private medical entrance, the new team, the careful timing. Everything had been planned so tightly that the absence of trouble began to feel like trouble wearing perfume. Rosa sat beside Clara in the second SUV, wrapped in a cream coat, cane across her lap, muttering about doctors who loved blood pressure cuffs more than conversation. Dante rode in the first SUV. Clara could see the back of his head through the windshield ahead, still and dark, his phone at his ear. He had not wanted to separate vehicles, but Luca had insisted. Safer, he said. Harder to take everyone at once. He had been wrong. The garage lights flickered as the first SUV turned toward the private elevator. Clara saw the maintenance van before the guards reacted. It was parked too close to the elevator doors. White, plain, forgettable. But the back doors were not fully shut. A strip of black fabric hung from one handle. Clara's body knew something before her mind did. Stop, she said. Rosa turned. What? Clara leaned forward. Stop the car. The driver touched his earpiece. Ma'am? The maintenance van doors flew open. Gunfire cracked through the garage. The world broke into sound. The first SUV swerved. Dante's guards poured out behind open doors. Luca shouted orders. Rosa's driver slammed the brakes so hard Clara's seatbelt locked across her chest. A bullet hit the windshield, spider-webbing the glass in front of them. Rosa gasped, one hand flying to her chest. Clara reached for her before thinking. Down, she said. The driver opened his door and fell back inside with a cry. Another shot shattered the side window. Glass sprayed across Clara's shoulder. Rosa was trying to move, but the stroke had made her body slower than her fear. Clara unbuckled, threw herself across the seat, and dragged Rosa down by the coat. Stay low, Clara said, though her own voice sounded far away. Through the broken window, she saw Dante. He was pinned behind the first SUV, trying to cross toward them, while Luca held him back. His face was no longer the face of a feared man. It was raw, furious terror. He shouted her name, but the gunfire swallowed it. A second group of men appeared near the elevator. Not shooting at Dante, shooting toward Rosa's SUV, toward Rosa. Clara saw the line of the gun, saw the shooter lift his arm, saw Rosa's white hair against the dark seat like a target. There was no time to be brave. That was the strange thing. Courage, in the moment, did not feel grand. It felt simple. A body moving before thought. A choice made by the heart while the mind was still catching up. Clara covered Rosa with herself. The first bullet hit like a fist made of fire. The second stole the air from her. The third turned the garage lights into bright white stars. Rosa screamed beneath her. Clara pressed down harder, using every soft, strong part of herself as a shield, her arms around the older woman's head, her body between Rosa and the open window. She thought of her father's hands dusted with flour. She thought of the truck. She thought, stupidly, that she had never finished testing the honey orange tart recipe. Then Dante reached them. The shooting stopped in pieces. Shouts, running feet, doors slamming. Luca's voice. Someone saying Russo's men were down. Someone yelling for medical. Dante pulled open the SUV door and froze for one impossible second. Clara looked up at him, or tried to. His face blurred. Rosa, she whispered. Dante's hands shook when he touched her. That scared her more than the blood, more than the pain, more than the cold spreading through her dress. Dante Marino's hands were not supposed to shake. My mother is alive, he said. His voice broke on the last word. Clara, look at me. She's safe? Yes. Good. Her mouth tried to smile. It didn't work very well. You owe me hazard pay. A sound came out of him that was almost a laugh and almost grief tearing its own throat open. Stay with me. I'm tired. No, you're bossy. Be angry at me later. That sounds like a date. It is. It is anything you want. Just stay. She wanted to tell him something funny, something perfect, something about cannoli or funeral processions, or how his face looked terrible when he was scared. But the garage was slipping away. Dante's hand pressed over one wound while medics rushed in. Rosa was crying. Luca was swearing. Somewhere, sirens screamed. Clara heard Dante say her name again and again, like if he repeated it enough, he could hold her inside the world. Then everything went white. For 12 hours, Dante Marino did not move from the surgical waiting room. Men came to him with updates about Russo, Dominic, the ambush team, the hospital leak, the federal attention gathering like vultures over smoke. He heard everything. He forgot none of it. But he did not leave. Blood had dried on his shirt cuffs. Clara's blood. Rosa sat nearby with a blanket around her shoulders, unharmed except for bruises, shock, and the terrible knowledge that another woman had nearly died beneath her. Once, Rosa reached for Dante's hand. He held it too tightly. She chose, Rosa said softly. Dante closed his eyes. I should have protected both of you. You are not God, Dante. No, he said. God would have been kinder. When the surgeon finally came out, Dante stood so fast, Luca moved with him. The doctor looked tired, but not hopeless. That was all Dante needed to keep breathing. Clara had survived the surgery. The bullets had missed her heart. There had been internal damage, blood loss, risk. Many words Dante heard through a roaring in his ears. Critical, but stable. The next 24 hours mattered. Stable. Dante held on to that word like a weapon. Then he went to war. Not the kind of war Russo expected. That was the first mistake his enemy made. Russo expected rage. He expected Dante to flood the streets with men and bullets, to become so wild with grief that every law enforcement agency in the state would have an excuse to cut into the Marino organization while Russo slipped away through the smoke. He expected the old Dante. The son of a violent father, the boy taught that pain had only one language, but Clara had not spent a week teaching him the value of small details for nothing. She had read the invoices, she had seen the vendor routes, she had found the money inside the sugar, so Dante did not burn the city. He froze it. By morning, Russo's shell companies lost access to 3 shipping lanes. By noon, 2 warehouse managers turned over records in exchange for protection. By evening, a councilman tied to Bellamy's charity resigned for personal reasons, while federal investigators received a package of clean documents with no Marino fingerprints on it. Russo's restaurant fronts failed health inspections, then liquor audits, then insurance reviews. His cash couriers were stopped by police, who had no idea Dante's men had fed them the plates. His bankers suddenly discovered compliance concerns. Men who had smiled beside Russo on Tuesday denied knowing him by Friday. Greed was loyal only until the room got cold. Dominic was found in a private airfield office at dawn. He did not run when Dante entered. Maybe he knew there was nowhere left. Maybe he wanted to believe years of friendship still meant the end would arrive with conversation instead of silence. He looked older than he had at the gala, smaller. Betrayal did that once it no longer had a crowd to impress. You loved me like a brother, Dominic said. Dante stood across from him. Luca waited by the door. I did, Dante said. Dominic swallowed. Russo promised territory, a clean split. No more living under your name. My mother was in that car. I told them not to hurt Rosa. Dante's face did not move. You leaked the appointment. I thought they would scare you, force you to negotiate. They shot Clara. Dominic flinched. For the first time, Dante's control cracked enough to show the thing underneath. Not loud. Not theatrical. Worse. Grief held so tightly it had become calm. You thought my love made me weak, Dante said. You were wrong. It made me precise. Dominic tried to speak again. Dante did not let him. He did not kill him in that room. That would have been easy, and Russo had planned for easy. Instead, Dante handed Dominic over to the very system Dominic had spent years bribing. Documents followed him. Names, accounts, recordings, evidence that made protection impossible. By the time Dominic realized Dante had chosen a cage over a grave, his face had gone grey. Luca looked at Dante afterward. Your father would have handled that differently. Dante watched the police car disappear down the airfield road. I know. That was all he said. Russo lasted 4 more days. Not because he was strong, because cornered men become messy, and Dante had to make sure the mess did not touch Clarara's world. He protected her truck, her commissary kitchen, her vendors. He found the debt collectors tied to her father's medical bills, and discovered 2 had been charging illegal fees for months. He did not pay them. He destroyed their claim, then sent Clarara's lawyer the paperwork because he knew she would hate him if he solved her life like she was a project. That was the hardest part. Not saving her, not fighting for her, waiting to ask what saving should look like. Russo was finally taken trying to flee through a shipping terminal Dante had once owned, and now legally did not. Federal agents made the arrest. Evidence made the charges. Former allies made the statements. Dante watched from a distance, unseen, then turned away before Russo was placed in the car. He did not go home to celebrate. He went to the hospital. Clarara woke on the 5th morning after the ambush with her throat dry, her body heavy, and the deeply unfair sensation that someone had parked a truck on her ribs. The room was dim. Machines beeped softly. Rain tapped the window. Gentler than the night everything began. For a few confused seconds, she did not know where she was. Then she saw Dante asleep in a chair beside her bed, one hand still resting near hers, close enough to offer, but not holding it without permission. Even unconscious, she apparently attracted dramatic men in expensive clothes. Her lips moved. Nothing came out. She tried again. Rosa? Dante woke instantly. Not slowly. Instantly, like sleep had only been pretending. He leaned forward, eyes searching her face. She's safe. Clarara closed her eyes. A tear slipped down her temple before she could stop it. Good. Dante looked like that one word had broken him more than all the bullets. He lowered his head until his forehead touched the edge of her blanket. For a moment, he did not speak. When he finally did, his voice was rough. You almost died. Bad habit, she whispered. Do not joke. Then don't look so tragic. It encourages me. He laughed once, but it hurt coming out. Clarara turned her hand slightly. He saw the invitation and took it carefully, as if her fingers were made of light. Russo? She asked. Gone. Dominic? Prison. You didn't kill him. No. Her eyes opened more fully. That was because of me. Dante shook his head. No, it was because of me. But you helped me want to be someone who could choose it. That was too much feeling for a woman on pain medicine. Clarara blinked hard. I need water before you become poetic and I lose respect. He gave her water with a straw. His hand was steady now, but his eyes stayed wounded. She sipped, coughed, regretted having a torso, and called him 3 rude names in a whisper. Dante looked so relieved by the insults that she nearly cried again. Rosa arrived later in a wheelchair, wearing red lipstick and a scarf like she was attending a premiere instead of visiting a woman in intensive care. She took Clarara's hand and kissed it. You saved my life, Rosa said. Clarara's eyes filled. You were in the way of a bullet. I'm very committed to correcting bad placement. Rosa laughed and cried at the same time. You are family now. Clara looked at Dante. Is this how your people adopt? Trauma and paperwork? Usually more paperwork, he said. Recovery was slow, which Clarara found offensive. She had always believed her body worked hard because it had to. Her arms lifted trays, hauled flour bags, changed truck tires, kneaded dough, carried grief, carried debt, carried everyone's doubts and her own stubborn heart. Now the same body shook when she sat up too fast. Walking to the bathroom felt like crossing a bridge in winter. Pain made her short-tempered. Weakness made her furious. Dante handled both like they were weather he had chosen to stand in. When she snapped, he did not snap back. When she cried because she could not wash her own hair the first week, he stood outside the bathroom door until she asked for help, then helped, without making tenderness feel like pity. When nightmares dragged her back to the garage, he sat beside the bed and spoke softly about ordinary things until the room became a room again. He told her Rosa had fired a physical therapist for saying excellent in a fake, cheerful voice. He told her Luca had become addicted to her cinnamon pear crisps and denied it while eating 4. He told her the truck was repaired, but not replaced, because he knew better than to surprise her with an expensive solution disguised as romance. "That is growth," she whispered once from her pillows. "I am pleased my restraint impresses you. Don't ruin it by sounding smug." She returned to the estate because the doctors wanted quiet, and Dante looked like he would buy the hospital if they tried to keep her longer. Her room overlooked the terrace and the water beyond the gardens. Rosa visited every morning. Luca brought flowers once and stood there looking uncomfortable until Clara told him he had the energy of a man apologizing to a vase. He smiled for real then. The kitchen staff learned her recipes the way people learned hymns. Dante brought food on trays and pretended he had not personally checked the salt level. He was not smooth in love. Clara discovered this with great pleasure. He could threaten a corrupt banker into confession, but became silent when helping her choose tea. He could dismantle Rousseau's empire without raising his voice, but looked personally attacked when she said his preferred soup needed lemon. He could face betrayal, blood, and federal heat with marble calm, but when she walked 12 steps without help for the first time, his eyes shone so openly that she had to look away. One evening, weeks after the ambush, Clara found him on the terrace alone. She was moving better by then, though still slowly, one hand resting against the wall when her side pulled. The air smelled like salt and wet grass. The sunset turned the water gold. Dante stood near the railing, phone in hand, but he was not looking at it. "You're brooding," she said. He turned quickly. "You should not be walking alone." And there goes the greeting. His mouth tightened. "Hello, Clara." "Better." He moved toward her, then stopped, waiting to see if she wanted help. She did. She hated that she did. She held out her hand. He took it and walked with her to the terrace sofa, as slowly as she needed. When she sat, he remained standing. "Dante." He looked at her. "What did you do?" His face gave nothing away. That was how she knew. "I moved several businesses." "That sounds vague and expensive." "It is both." She waited. He looked toward the water. "The shipping company is clean now." "Fully. No ghost cargo, no favors hidden in manifests. The security firm will remain legal. Real estate holdings are being separated from old money. Anything that cannot survive daylight will be closed or cut loose." Clara stared at him. Dante did not look proud. He looked tired. Lighter, maybe, but only in the way a man looked after putting down something he had carried so long he no longer knew which pain belonged to him. "You're leaving it?" she asked softly. "The bloodiest parts. Because of me?" He turned back. "Because of what happened to you. Because of my mother. Because Dominic knew every shadow in my house, and I let him. Because I am tired of calling violence inheritance." The wind moved between them. Clara's throat tightened. "That isn't simple." "No. Men will push. Yes. You'll lose money. Yes. Power. Some." She studied him. "And you're okay with that?" His eyes held hers. "I do not want a life where loving me means learning exit routes." Clara looked away, but the tears came anyway. She was annoyed by how often this man had made her cry lately. Very rude. Very poor guest treatment. Dante knelt in front of her then. Her heart stopped so hard it seemed to take the whole terrace with it. No, she said immediately, panicked. He froze. I mean, not no to whatever this is. Maybe no. I don't know. You cannot kneel suddenly while I'm emotionally unstable and wearing compression socks. For one stunned second, Dante said nothing. Then he laughed. A real laugh. Full and warm and almost boyish. It changed him completely. Clara felt it everywhere. I am not proposing this second, he said. Oh, she pressed a hand to her chest. Well, continue kneeling then, but respectfully. I am asking you something else first. That sounds dangerous. It is, he took her hand. When you are well, I want you to come back to Queens with me. She blinked. What? I want to see Hughes and Honey where it belongs. Your commissary, your roots, the corner where your father parked, the customers who knew him. I want to know your world before I ask you to share mine. Clara stared at him, and all her jokes left her for once. Dante's thumb moved gently over her knuckles. I should have asked sooner who you were outside my danger. That sentence did what no proposal could have done yet. It opened a door without pushing her through it. So she took him to Queens. Not that day. Not that week. But when she could walk without holding her side, and Rosa stopped pretending not to worry every time she stood up, Clara put on soft pants, comfortable shoes, and the bright yellow jacket she wore when working the truck. Dante arrived in a plain black coat, which for him was apparently casual. Luca drove them because Dante claimed it was security, and Clara claimed he was afraid of Queen's parking. Hughes and Honey returned to its old corner on a crisp Saturday morning. The truck looked better than it had in years. Not new. Clara would not allow new. But repaired, polished, steady. The logo had been repainted by the same sign artist her father had used. The little B was back in the corner. Clara pretended not to cry when she saw it. Dante pretended not to notice. That was love too, she was learning, knowing when to look away. Customers came slowly at first, then all at once. Old regulars hugged her carefully. Kids pointed at Dante and asked if he was a bodyguard. Clara said he was an intern. Dante accepted this with dignity, until she made him wear an apron. Luca laughed so hard he had to walk around the block. Dante was terrible at taking orders. He frightened a man who only wanted 6 cupcakes. He handed change like it was evidence. He stood too close to the register and made everyone straighten their posture. But when a little girl asked for extra honey drizzle and Clara was busy boxing cannoli, Dante looked at Clara for help instead of pretending he knew everything. She showed him. He listened. The drizzle was uneven. The child loved it. Near closing, an older woman who had known Marvin Hughes stood by the truck window and studied Dante. You taking care of our girl? Clara opened her mouth to object, but Dante answered first. She takes care of herself, he said. I am trying to become useful. The older woman nodded. Good answer. Clara had to turn around and reorganize napkins for 30 seconds. Months passed. Not peaceful months exactly. Peace was not something Dante's world handed over quickly. There were legal meetings, business changes, angry men losing old comforts, newspapers wondering why certain merino companies had suddenly become boring. There were Clara's medical appointments, pain flares, good days, bad nights. There were arguments too, real ones. Dante still had the instinct to solve first and ask later. Clara still had the instinct to bite before trusting kindness. But now, when they crossed a line, they came back. They apologized. They tried again. Hughes and Honey grew. Not because Dante secretly bought her success. He offered once in 6 different polite disguises, and Clara threatened to fill his shoes with pastry cream. Instead, he helped her find a business attorney, a fair accountant, and a loan structure that did not smell like a trap. Rosa invested only after Clara made her sit through a formal pitch with numbers, projections, and samples. Rosa ate 3 samples and called herself a serious investor. A small storefront opened in Queens 6 months later, painted honey yellow with white trim. Above the door, the sign read, Hughes and Honey Bakery, with the little B beside the name. On opening morning, Clara stood in the empty shop before sunrise. The cases were full. Cannoli shells waited in rows. Honey cakes gleamed beneath glass. Orange ricotta cups filled one shelf because Rosa had demanded representation. A framed photograph of Marvin Hughes hung near the register. In it, he was smiling with flour on his cheek. Dante came in quietly behind her. "You are early," she said. "You are earlier." "I own the place." "I know." She turned. He wore a dark suit, but no tie. Clara narrowed her eyes. "Did you come into my bakery underdressed? I was told my ties look like tax audits." "Only when badly folded." He moved closer, carrying a small white bakery box. Clara looked at it suspiciously. "If there is another flash drive in there, I'm retiring." "No flash drive." That's what someone with a flash drive would say. He held it out. She opened it. Inside was a single cannoli, not from her case. This one was imperfect, shells slightly uneven, one end overfilled, powdered sugar scattered with the confidence of a snowstorm. Clara stared at it. "I made it," Dante said. She looked up slowly. "You made a cannoli?" "Yes." "Alone?" Luca supervised the fryer from a safe distance. "That is wise. How many died?" "Several." She lifted the box closer, touched the edge of the shell, and felt something warm and ridiculous bloom inside her. "Why?" Dante's voice softened. "Because the first night I met you, I ruined yours. You were part of a larger traffic-based tragedy. I wanted to return one properly." Her eyes stung. "It's ugly. I know. I love it. I hoped you might." The shop was quiet around them, full of sugar and morning light. Outside, Queens began waking up. A bus sighed at the curb. Someone rolled up a metal gate. The world moved on, rude and beautiful. Dante took a breath. This time, when he knelt, Clara did not panic. Much. "Oh," she whispered. He looked up at her, and there was no empire in his face. No command. No violence. No room full of men waiting for orders. Only Dante, the man who had learned how to ask. "I will not promise you a life without danger," he said. "I will not insult you with something false, but I promise you this. You will never have to become smaller to stand beside me. Not in my house. Not in my world, not in your own. I will ask before I protect. I will listen before I decide. I will build a life where our children, if we have them, know more recipes than escape routes. And I will spend every day proving that power can kneel without making love weaker." Clara covered her mouth. "That was very prepared." "I practiced." "With who?" "My mother." "That explains the children line." She added it. Of course she did. He opened the small velvet box in his hand. The ring was simple. Warm gold. One soft diamond. No giant mafia display. No stone so large it needed its own security team. It looked like something she could wear while living, not something that would trap her hand behind glass. Dante's voice dropped lower. "Clara Hughes, will you marry me?" For once, Clara did not answer right away, not because she doubted him, because she wanted to feel the size of the choice. Her whole life people had expected her to accept whatever was offered and be grateful. Less space, less kindness, less money, less love. Dante was offering more, but the miracle was not the more. The miracle was that he waited while she decided. She looked at her father's photograph, then at the bakery, then at Dante, kneeling on the floor of Hughes and Honey with powdered sugar on his sleeve from the ugly cannoli he had made with his own dangerous hands. "Yes," she said, crying now and not caring. "But you still owe me a new dessert truck." Dante smiled. Not the almost smile. Not the careful one. A real smile, bright enough to make him look younger and a little ruined by happiness. "You can have the truck," he said. "The bakery, the estate kitchen whenever you want it." She raised an eyebrow through tears. Careful, he took her hand and kissed her fingers. "And me." Clara looked down at him, at the man who had once stepped out of an armored escalade in the rain like trouble wearing a coat, at the man who had learned that love was not ownership, at the man who had changed his whole world because a baker refused to be treated like a weakness. "You," she said softly, "I'll take." Outside, the first customers began lining up. Rosa arrived 10 minutes later wearing pearls and demanding coffee. Luca carried flowers and denied crying. Dante burned his fingers helping with the espresso machine. Clara laughed so hard her side ached, and this time the pain felt like proof that she was alive to feel everything. Years later, people would tell the story in ridiculous ways. They would say Dante Marino fell in love because a woman hit his car. They would say Clara Hughes saved his mother and softened his empire with cannoli. They would say the feared boss of New York was defeated by a plus-size baker from Queens who yelled at him in the rain and never learned how to be afraid properly. They would be mostly wrong. Clara had been afraid from the beginning. She had been afraid of debt, grief, bullets, love, hospitals, failure, and the terrible hope that came when someone looked at her like she was not too much, but exactly enough. Dante had been afraid too, afraid that everything he touched became blood, afraid that loving someone meant giving his enemies a place to aim, afraid that if he opened the door to gentleness, the whole empire his father built would collapse behind him. Maybe it did. Maybe that was the point, because on quiet evenings, when the bakery closed and the estate lights glowed over the water, Dante would find Clara on the terrace with flour still on her cheek, and he would kiss her like a man grateful to have survived his own darkness. Rosa would shout advice from inside whether anyone wanted it or not. Hughes and honey would smell like cinnamon, citrus, and warm sugar, and somewhere near the door, painted in honey-yellow letters on a truck that finally had good brakes, Clara's father's name would keep shining. The night they met had begun with ruined cannoli, rain, and a hidden flash drive. It ended, in the only way Clara would have believed, with a bakery full of light, a dangerous man, washing dishes badly, and a woman who never once had to make herself smaller to be loved.